I didn't quit my job because I was lazy. I quit because someone had to catch our son when he spiked a fever at 2 p.m. Someone had to sit through speech therapy appointments, answer the school's calls, cook the meals, pay the bills, and smile through family dinners like everything was effortless. That someone was me. So when my husband lifted his glass at his company barbecue, laughed, and said, "Penelope used to have a career. Now she's basically a loser," I felt the world tilt. People chuckled. A few looked uncomfortable. He squeezed my waist like it was all a joke. But it wasn't. I had given up my paycheck, my promotions, my independence so he could chase his. I had traded business meetings for bedtime routines, client calls for carpool lines. And in one careless sentence, he reduced all of it to nothing. He thought I would smile and let it go. He had no idea that was the moment I stopped being silent. Before I became Ethan's wife who stays home, I was Penelope Carter operations coordinator at a logistics firm in Columbus. I had a color-coded calendar, a corner desk by the window, and a manager who once told me, "If I had 3 more of you, this place would run itself." I loved that job. I loved solving problems before they exploded. I loved walking into meetings prepared. I loved earning my own money. Ethan loved it too at first. "You're incredible," he used to say when we were dating. "I don't know how you juggle everything." Back then, we were partners. We split rent, we split chores. We dreamed about buying a house with a yard big enough for future kids. Then we had Noah. Then Lily came 18 months later. And somewhere between the pediatrician appointments and the daycare waiting lists, the balance shifted. It started subtly. "Pen, can you leave early and grab Noah? I have a client dinner." "Babe, can you handle the insurance call? You're better at paperwork." "My mom needs a ride Thursday." "You're flexible, right?" Flexible. That word became my new title. When Ethan got offered a promotion, more pay, longer hours, travel twice a month, he framed it like an opportunity for both of us. "This is our breakthrough," he said, pacing our kitchen with excitement. "If I take this role, we'll finally be comfortable." I stared at the spreadsheet open on my laptop. Daycare costs had just increased. My salary covered most of it. His promotion would raise our income, but not enough to offset constant last-minute absences from my job. Because when a child gets sick, it's not a shared inconvenience. It's a decision. And somehow, it was always my decision to make. The third time I had to leave work early in 2 weeks, my supervisor called me in. "We value you, Penelope," she said gently. "But leadership requires consistency." Consistency. I drove home with that word echoing in my head. That night, Ethan wrapped an arm around me while I cried quietly on the couch. "You don't have to keep killing yourself," he said softly. "Quit for a while. Stay home with the kids. I'll handle the money." "For how long?" I whispered. "Just until things stabilize," he promised. "It's temporary." Temporary sounded safe. Temporary sounded strategic. Temporary sounded like I wasn't giving up who I was, just pausing her. So I drafted my resignation email at 11:47 p.m., staring at the blinking cursor like it was asking me one last time if I was sure. I hit send. The next morning, I made waffles shaped like dinosaurs and told myself this was an investment in our family. Ethan kissed my cheek on his way out the door. "You're amazing," he said. "I couldn't do this without you." And I believed him. What I didn't realize was that "I couldn't do this without you" would slowly turn into "you don't do anything." And temporary would start stretching into something that felt permanent. The first few weeks at home felt almost peaceful. I convinced myself this was a reset. I organized closets. I deep cleaned the pantry. I scheduled pediatric checkups and dental cleanings like I was managing a small corporation, which, in a way, I was. Noah needed speech therapy twice a week. Lily had recurring ear infections. Ethan's mother, Marjorie, called every other day with something she just couldn't figure out online. I became the central processing unit of our entire household. If the dishwasher broke, I handled it. If the school sent an email, I responded. If Ethan forgot a birthday gift for his colleague, I ordered it and signed both our names. And yet, when someone asked Ethan how things were going, he'd smile and say, "Busy." I'm carrying a lot right now. Carrying. I swallowed that word more times than I can count. One evening, after I had spent 3 hours juggling dinner, bath time, and helping Noah sound out his reading homework, Ethan walked through the door and frowned. "It's loud," he said. I blinked at him. They're 5 and 3. He loosened his tie. I've had meetings all day. I just need quiet. I wanted to scream. I haven't sat down since 6 a.m. Instead, I said calmly, "Can you take over bath time?" He hesitated. "I just got home, Pen. And I never left," I replied. He didn't answer. He just grabbed his phone and scrolled while I wiped spilled milk off the counter. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't dramatic. It was erosion. Little by little, the respect shifted. He started making comments about money. Do we really need organic strawberries? Why is the electric bill higher? Did you check for coupons? I stared at him one night, stunned. Ethan, I don't buy anything for myself. He shrugged. I'm just saying, we're on one income now. One income. Like I wasn't contributing. Like I wasn't the reason he could stay at the office until 8 p.m. without worrying who was picking up the kids. Then came the bank account conversation. I noticed I didn't have direct access to our main savings anymore. I assumed it was a mistake. Hey, I said lightly. Can you send me the login details again? He didn't look up from his laptop. I'll handle it. I know, I said carefully. But I'd like access too. His jaw tightened. Why? The question stunned me. Because I'm your wife. He exhaled sharply, like I was being unreasonable. You don't need to stress about finances. That's my role. My role. His role. Somewhere along the way, we had stopped being partners and started being departments. And mine didn't come with authority. Marjorie noticed the shift too and leaned into it. She began dropping by unannounced, inspecting my kitchen like a supervisor. You must be exhausted, she'd say sweetly. It's hard when you don't have a real outlet. I smiled tightly. Raising children is real. She would pat my arm. Of course, dear, but Ethan works so hard. It's good he has someone holding down the fort. Holding down the fort. As if I were a placeholder. Temporary. Replaceable. That word again. One night, after Marjorie left, I told Ethan how her comments made me feel. He sighed dramatically. She doesn't mean it like that. She treats me like I'm unemployed, I said. Well, he replied. Not unkindly, but not kindly either. Technically. I stared at him. Technically. I repeated. He shrugged. You don't bring in income. There it was. Not cruel. Not shouted. Just factual. In his mind. I went upstairs that night and looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My hair was tied back in a messy knot. There were faint circles under my eyes. My hands were rough from constant cleaning and washing. I tried to remember the woman who negotiated contracts and led meetings. She felt far away. And for the first time, I wondered if Ethan preferred it that way. The company barbecue was Ethan's idea. It's important, he said a week before the event, standing in front of the mirror adjusting his cufflinks. Greg will be there. His wife too. I want us to look solid. Solid? I asked. You know, he said vaguely. Happy. Stable. Supportive. Supportive. I nodded slowly. Of course. He kissed my cheek like that, settled it. The morning of the barbecue, I woke up early to pack snacks. Sunscreen, spare clothes, wipes, juice boxes, the invisible checklist that followed me everywhere. I dressed Noah in a polo shirt and Lily in a yellow dress that she insisted was her princess outfit. Ethan wore a crisp navy shirt and the watch he'd bought after his promotion. You look great, he told himself in the hallway mirror. Then he glanced at me. You look fine, he said. Fine. I swallowed the flicker of irritation and forced a smile. The park was already buzzing when we arrived. Folding tables, balloons, coworkers laughing too loudly, kids chasing each other near the playground. Ethan straightened the moment we stepped out of the car. Remember, he murmured, leaning toward me. Just relax. Don't overthink anything. I blinked. Overthink what? Just don't bring up stress stuff, he said quickly. Let's keep it light. Light. I balanced Lily on my hip while Ethan shook hands and clapped backs like he was running for office. Ethan. Someone called. Man of the hour. He laughed, broad and confident. This is my wife, Penelope, he said proudly, pulling me forward. A woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile stepped closer. I'm Samantha, she said. I've heard so much about you. Oh? I replied carefully. Samantha smiled. Ethan says you keep everything running at home so he can focus on work. That's impressive. I hesitated for half a second too long. Impressive. I wasn't sure if that word was meant as admiration or consolation. Well, I said evenly. Someone has to make sure the wheels don't fall off. Ethan squeezed my shoulder too tight to be affectionate. See? He said lightly. She's got it covered. Got it covered. As if the house, the kids, the bills, the scheduling, the emotional labor were just background noise in his success story. Then Marjorie arrived. Of course she did. She stepped out of her car like she was walking into a gala instead of a park. "Oh, Ethan," she exclaimed, hugging him dramatically. "Look at you." Then she turned to me. "Penelope," she said sweetly, eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Still enjoying your little break from work?" "Little break. It's not a break," I replied calmly. "It's parenting." She tilted her head. "Of course, dear. But you'll go back eventually, won't you? It's healthy to have something of your own." I almost laughed. Healthy. As if I hadn't surrendered the most stable thing I had. Before I could answer, Ethan jumped in. "We'll see," he said casually. "Right now it makes sense for her to stay home." Makes sense. Like it had been a joint business decision instead of a slow narrowing of options. Noah tugged my hand. "Mom, can you push me on the swings?" "Yes," I said immediately. Ethan didn't offer to help. As I pushed Noah higher and higher, listening to his delighted squeals, I watched Ethan across the field laughing with Greg, animated, confident. He looked free. And I realized something that unsettled me deeply. He liked this version of me. The one who stayed in the background. The one who made sure his life worked. The one who didn't compete. Later, as we gathered near the picnic tables, Ethan handed me a drink. "Smile," he whispered under his breath. "I am smiling," I replied. "Bigger," he said. I stared at him. "For what?" I asked. "For them," he said, nodding toward his coworkers. "For them, not for us." Not because he was proud, but because I was part of the display. And somewhere inside my chest, something tightened. Because I had the distinct, creeping feeling that this afternoon wasn't about celebration. It was about positioning. And I was about to find out exactly where Ethan believed I belonged. By noon, the sun was high and the laughter louder. Ethan's boss, Greg, had arrived. The energy shifted immediately. Conversations straightened. Postures improved. Even Ethan's voice deepened slightly, like he was stepping into a version of himself designed for approval. Greg was older, observant, the kind of man who didn't miss much. His wife stood beside him, polite but watchful. Ethan guided us toward the picnic tables where drinks were being refilled. "Let's do a quick toast," Greg said casually. "To the team, strong quarter." Plastic cups lifted. Ethan grinned, stepping forward before anyone else could speak. "Honestly," he began, projecting confidence, "this promotion has been intense, but I've had amazing support." He gestured to his coworkers. Applause. Then he slid an arm around my waist. "And of course, my family." I felt his hand press into my side, not painful, just firm enough to anchor me. "Couldn't do it without Penelope," he added. A few people smiled warmly. For half a second, I thought maybe I'd misjudged him. Then he laughed. "You know, she used to have a real career," he said, shaking his head playfully. "Now she's basically a loser who bosses around toddlers all day." A few chuckles broke out, uncertain, reflexive. I didn't laugh. The air thinned. Someone coughed. Greg's smile froze in place, like he wasn't sure whether he'd heard correctly. Ethan squeezed me again. "Relax," he said lightly, still grinning. "She knows I'm kidding." All eyes turned to me. My ears rang. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Noah looked up at me, confused. "Mom?" Marjorie laughed too loud. "Oh, Ethan," she chimed in. "You're terrible, terrible." As if that excused it. As if humiliation was a personality quirk. Ethan looked at me expectantly. "Right, Pen?" he prompted. He wanted the performance. He wanted the smiling wife who absorbed the joke so he could appear charming. And in that suspended second, I understood something with painful clarity. If I laughed, this would become our story. If I smiled, this would become my identity. So I set my cup down. Slowly. Carefully. "I actually had to quit my job," I said evenly. The laughter died. Ethan's smile faltered. "Penelope," he warned softly. I didn't raise my voice. I quit because our daycare costs were unsustainable, I continued calmly. Because someone had to leave work when Noah got sick. Because someone had to coordinate therapy appointments and manage the household. Greg shifted slightly, attentive now. I kept going. And Ethan asked me to step back so he could step forward. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not what he began. But it's what happened, I replied gently. The word gentle landed harder than anger ever could. Samantha spoke quietly from the side. That's not being a loser. Ethan shot her a look. Okay, he said quickly, forcing a laugh. This is getting dramatic. No, I said. It's getting honest. Silence again. The kids' laughter from the playground felt distant, like it belonged to another world. Marjorie stepped forward, her smile brittle. Penelope, don't make a scene. I turned to her. I didn't start the scene. Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Stop, he hissed. You're embarrassing me. And that word embarrassing snapped something into focus. I've been embarrassed for years, I replied, just as softly. He blinked. I straightened my shoulders. I gave up financial independence, I said to the group. I gave up career progression. I manage every invisible detail of our lives so Ethan can work late and travel. That's not failure. No one interrupted me now. And if we're going to label anyone, I added carefully, maybe we should start by asking why unpaid labor is considered worthless. Greg cleared his throat. That's a fair point, he said cautiously. Ethan stared at him in disbelief. Greg continued, measured. Partnership means mutual respect. Ethan's composure cracked slightly. It was a joke, he insisted. A joke is funny to both people, Samantha replied quietly. The sentence hung in the air like a verdict. For the first time, I saw it not anger in Ethan's eyes, not dominance. Fear. Not of me. Of losing control of the narrative. I didn't yell. I didn't insult him back. I simply reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I'm done being the punchline, I said. Ethan stepped back, stunned. Penelope, what are you doing? Setting a boundary, I answered. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Greg glanced at Ethan, then at me. Maybe, Greg suggested carefully. This conversation would be better continued privately. I nodded. Yes, I agreed. Privately. With clarity. Ethan's breathing was uneven now. You're blowing this out of proportion, he muttered. No, I replied. You minimized my life. That's proportionate. I bent down, taking Noah's hand. Then Lily's. We're going home, I said calmly. Ethan reached toward me instinctively, then stopped himself, aware now of the watching eyes. Don't do this, he whispered. I already did, I said. And as I walked away, not storming, not crying, just steady, I realized something powerful. The humiliation he intended for me had circled back. Because the only person who looked small in that moment wasn't me. The drive home was silent, except for the hum of the tires against the pavement. Noah stared out the window. Lily dozed off, her head tilted awkwardly against her car seat. I kept my hands steady on the wheel, even though my pulse hadn't slowed. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was clear. Ethan's car pulled into the driveway seconds after mine. He got out quickly, slamming his door harder than necessary. The front door barely closed before he started. What was that? He demanded, pacing across the living room. Have you completely lost it? I calmly helped Noah take off his shoes. Upstairs, buddy, I said softly. Mom needs to talk to Dad. Noah hesitated. Are you mad? I knelt to his level. No, I'm strong. He nodded slowly and took Lily's hand. When their bedroom doors shut, Ethan turned back to me, furious. You humiliated me in front of my boss, he snapped. Do you understand what that could do to my career? I looked at him carefully. You humiliated me first. It was a joke. It wasn't funny. He dragged a hand through his hair. You're overreacting. Everyone jokes like that. About their spouse being a loser? I asked evenly. He exhaled sharply. You know I didn't mean it. Then why did you say it? That question stopped him. For a split second, his face showed something unguarded. Then it hardened again. You're twisting this, he said. I've been under pressure. I needed the room to relax. At my expense? I asked. He didn't answer directly. You don't understand what it's like to carry everything financially, he muttered. I felt something shift inside me, not anger, but clarity. I do understand, I said quietly. Because I carried everything else. He scoffed. Staying home isn't the same. No, I agreed. It's unpaid. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. I provide, he said coldly. And I enable that, I replied. Without me managing our home, you wouldn't have the time to provide. He shook his head, pacing again. You're trying to make me the villain. I'm trying to make you accountable. The word hung heavy between us. Accountable. Ethan stopped pacing. What do you want? He asked finally, his voice lower now. It wasn't soft. It was calculating. I want respect, I said. I want access to our finances. I want shared responsibility. And I want you to stop minimizing what I do. He laughed once short and incredulous. So you blow up my work event to get that? I didn't blow it up, I replied calmly. I told the truth. You could have waited until we were home. And you could have kept my name out of your joke. Silence. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face tightened. Greg. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me differently now. Not dismissive, not mocking. Wary. You've put me in a bad position, he said. No, I corrected gently. I stepped out of one. That unsettled him more than anything, because he was used to me absorbing tension. Used to me smoothing edges. Used to me apologizing first. He sat down heavily on the couch. So what now? He asked. I took a breath. Now, we talk like adults, I said. Not like one of us is disposable. His jaw clenched again. You're threatening divorce? I'm protecting myself, I answered. The distinction mattered. He studied me. You wouldn't, he said quietly. You gave up your job. You're dependent on me. There it was. Not shouted. Not cruelly phrased. But clear. Dependent. I felt the sting not because it was true but because he believed it gave him leverage. I straightened. I gave up income, I said. Not intelligence, not capability. He looked away first. The power dynamic had shifted just slightly, but enough for him to feel it. Upstairs, Lily started crying. Without thinking, I moved toward the stairs. Ethan didn't follow, and that small detail told me everything. He wanted control, but he still expected me to do the work. At the top of the stairs, I paused. I realized something crucial in that quiet hallway. The barbecue wasn't the real turning point. The real turning point was this moment when he tried to remind me of my dependence, and I didn't shrink. Downstairs, I could hear him pacing again, muttering under his breath. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the silence, because I understood something now. He hadn't called me a loser because I was weak. He called me that because my strength made him uncomfortable. And now that strength was no longer invisible. And that scared him more than anything I had said at that picnic table. The next morning, I didn't slam doors. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I woke up at 6:15 a.m., made coffee, packed lunches, braided Lily's hair, and signed Noah's reading log like I had every other weekday for the past 3 years. Ethan came downstairs quieter than usual. Morning, he said cautiously. Morning, I replied, neutral. He studied me like he was trying to gauge whether a storm was coming. But I wasn't a storm. I was strategy. After the kids left for school, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. For the first time since I resigned, I opened a new document titled Household Contributions and Financial Overview. I listed everything. My previous salary, the retirement contributions I had stopped, the health insurance shift, the estimated market value of full-time childcare, the average cost of household management services. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I downloaded our bank statements. Not secretly. Legally. As a spouse with joint access to shared accounts access, Ethan had slowly made more complicated over time. I printed pages. Highlighted patterns. Not because I wanted a fight. Because I wanted clarity. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was Samantha. Hey, just checking in. That comment yesterday didn't sit right with a lot of people. I stared at the message. A lot of people? Greg wasn't impressed, she added. He believes in professionalism. Public disrespect reflects badly. I exhaled slowly. For years, Ethan had operated under the assumption that his behavior existed in a private bubble. Now that bubble had cracks. I replied. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. A few minutes later, Ethan walked into the kitchen. He saw the papers immediately. What's all that? He asked. tension creeping into his voice. Documentation, I said calmly. Documentation of what? Of reality. He let out a short breath. Penelope, you're being dramatic. No, I corrected, not looking up. I'm being prepared. For what? For options. That word landed harder than divorce ever could have. He pulled out a chair across from me. You're not seriously planning to blow up our marriage over one joke? I folded my hands. It wasn't one joke, I said quietly. It was years of minimization. He leaned back, frustrated. You chose to stay home. I held his gaze. I chose what was necessary, I replied. There's a difference. He opened his mouth, then paused. Because deep down, he knew it was true. The daycare bills had been real. The scheduling conflicts had been real. The exhaustion had been real. What hadn't been real was his promise that it was temporary. I said we'd revisit things, he muttered. You never did, I said. You got comfortable. That word hit him. Comfortable. Comfortable having someone else absorb the invisible load. Comfortable being the sole earner. Comfortable holding financial leverage. I slid one of the printed pages across the table. Do you know what full-time childcare costs in Columbus right now? I asked. He glanced at it but didn't respond. Do you know how much a household manager earns? I continued. Pen. Because if you had to pay market rate for what I do, I said gently, you wouldn't call me a loser. Silence. He stared at the numbers longer this time. This isn't about money, he said finally. It is, I replied. It's about value. His jaw tightened. You think I don't value you? I think you value what I provide, I answered carefully. But not who I am. That landed. He stood up abruptly, pacing again. You're turning this into a legal thing, he accused. I met his eyes. Yes. The honesty startled him. I scheduled a consultation, I added. Not to file anything, to understand my rights. His face drained of color. You're serious? I am. For what? To take the kids? To take half my income? I'm not taking anything, I said firmly. I'm ensuring protection. Protection from me? He asked, offended. From imbalance, I clarified. He ran a hand through his hair. This is insane. No, I said calmly. What's insane is believing someone who gives up financial independence should also give up dignity. He stopped pacing. You're not the same, he said quietly. I considered that. You're right, I replied. I'm not. Because something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't trying to win an argument anymore. I was building leverage, not to hurt him, to equalize the field. That afternoon, I opened a new checking account in my own name. I transferred a modest amount from our joint account legally allowable, documented. When Ethan noticed the notification, he stormed into the kitchen. What did you just do? I opened an account, I said simply. You didn't tell me. I'm telling you now. That's my income, he said sharply. It's our income, I corrected. And this is my emergency fund. For what emergency? He demanded. For the one where respect disappears. He stared at me, stunned. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't asking permission. And that frightened him more than public embarrassment ever could. That evening, when he tried a softer tone, let's just forget this happened, I didn't soften with him. I don't want to forget, I said. I want to fix. And if I don't agree? He challenged. I didn't raise my voice. Then we formalize everything. He swallowed. Because now he understood something critical. I wasn't emotional. I was informed. And information changes power. For years, he had operated under the belief that my sacrifice tied me to him. But what he hadn't anticipated was this. The same discipline that made me good at my job was now being used to protect myself. And for the first time since I quit, I didn't feel small. I felt capable again. Not because I had a paycheck, but because I had a plan. 3 days after I opened my own account, Ethan came home earlier than usual. That alone told me something. He set his keys down carefully, not tossing them like he normally did. His movements were controlled, deliberate. We need to talk, he said. I was at the dining table, updating my resume. I agree, I replied without looking up. He noticed the screen immediately. You're applying for jobs? Yes. He laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Penelope, be realistic. Who's going to hire someone who's been out of the workforce for years? The words were subtle, but the intention wasn't. It was doubt. Measured, strategic. I closed the laptop slowly. Plenty of companies hire experienced professionals returning to work, I said calmly, especially ones with documented leadership history. His jaw tightened. You're doing this to punish me. No, I answered. I'm doing this to stabilize myself. He stepped closer. Do you know what this looks like? He asked. You humiliating me at work, opening secret accounts, talking to lawyers. I didn't open a secret account, I interrupted. I opened a legal one. That's not the point. It is, I said quietly. He exhaled sharply and sat across from me. You've changed. I've adjusted. I corrected. He leaned back, studying me in a way that felt almost clinical. You're acting like I'm some controlling monster. I'm acting like I deserve equal footing. He went silent. Then he tried a different tactic. You think I wanted you to quit? He asked, softer now. I didn't force you. No, I agreed. You just made it the only logical option. That's not fair. It's accurate. He rubbed his temples. You're rewriting history. No, I said gently. I'm remembering it clearly. That's when the shift happened. The controlled tone slipped. His frustration cracked open. You don't understand what it's like being responsible for everything, he snapped. The mortgage, the insurance, the risk. I stood up slowly. And you don't understand what it's like having no income and being called a loser in public. The room felt charged. He took a step closer. I said I was joking. And I said it wasn't funny. We stood there, inches apart, not yelling, not touching. Just the space between us filled with years of imbalance. Then he said something that revealed more than he realized. You need me, he muttered. There it was. Not love. Not partnership. Leverage. I held his gaze. I needed you, I said calmly. Now I'm choosing myself. That unsettled him deeply, because dependence had been the foundation of his comfort. If I was dependent, he was secure. If I was secure, he had to compete. The next morning, his phone buzzed repeatedly during breakfast. Greg. Again. Ethan stepped outside to answer. I watched through the window. His posture was stiff, his face tight. He wasn't laughing. When he came back inside, he avoided my eyes. What did he say? I asked. Nothing, Ethan replied quickly. Just feedback. About? He hesitated. Professional conduct. I nodded slowly. That barbecue comment wasn't just a marital misstep. It had professional consequences. For the first time, his behavior had followed him beyond our walls, and he didn't like that. Later that afternoon, Samantha sent me another message. HR is updating company policies about public events. Just so you know, it wasn't ignored. I stared at the screen. Ignored. That word echoed. For years, my concerns had been ignored. Now, suddenly, someone was paying attention. Ethan sensed the shift too. That evening, he tried charm. He brought home flowers. I don't want us fighting, he said gently. Let's just reset. Reset to what? I asked. To normal. Normal. Normal was me shrinking. Normal was him joking at my expense. Normal was financial opacity. No, I said quietly. We don't go back. We move forward. He looked exhausted. You're threatening everything. I'm redefining it. There was a long pause. Then he asked, carefully. If you go back to work, what happens to the kids? We split responsibilities, I replied. He almost laughed. You think I can just leave meetings to pick them up? I met his eyes. I did. That hit harder than anger ever could. He didn't have a counter-argument that didn't expose the double standard. The next week, I attended my legal consultation. Not to file. To understand. Property division. Parental rights. Financial transparency. Safeguards. Knowledge felt like oxygen. When I told Ethan afterward calmly, factually, he sat down slowly. You're serious, he said again. I've been serious for years, I answered. You just didn't notice. That night, after the kids went to bed, he spoke in a way he hadn't before. Not defensive. Not arrogant. Scared. I don't want to lose my family, he admitted. I studied him carefully. Then stop trying to win against me, I said. And start standing with me. He looked at the floor. Because that required something he hadn't practiced in a long time. Humility. And as I stood there, steady and calm, I realized something powerful. He had thought the barbecue was a moment of dominance. Instead, it was exposure. And once the mask slips, It's very hard to put it back on. Change didn't happen overnight. There wasn't a dramatic apology scene. No grand gesture with tears and violins in the background. There were meetings. There were hard conversations. There were long silences that forced both of us to sit with uncomfortable truths. And for the first time in years, Ethan had to listen. Not interrupt. Not minimize. Not reframe. Just listen. We started with logistics. Shared access to all accounts restored. Full transparency on income, savings, and spending documented. A written plan dividing school pickups, medical appointments, and household management printed and posted on the fridge. It felt clinical at first. Like we were negotiating a business merger instead of maintaining a marriage. But maybe that was the point. For too long, our marriage had operated like a company with unequal shareholders. Now, I insisted on equity. 2 weeks later, I got a call. An operations consulting firm, mid-sized, flexible schedule, hybrid model wanted to interview me. When I hung up, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there in my kitchen, hands steady, heart pounding with quiet validation. Ethan came home later that evening. I have an interview next Tuesday, I told him calmly. He blinked. Oh, not excitement. Not immediate support. Just recalculation. We'll need to figure out childcare, he said. Yes, I replied evenly. We will. We. The word hung differently now. The interview went well. When they offered me a part-time consulting contract with growth potential, I felt something return to me, not just income. Identity. The first morning I logged into my new company portal, I sat straighter. I wasn't reclaiming who I used to be. I was integrating her with who I had become. A mother, a manager, a strategist, and, stronger than before. Ethan struggled at first. The first time he had to leave work early because Lily's school called, he sounded irritated on the phone. I'm in the middle of something, he whispered harshly. So was I replied calmly. He picked her up. The world did not end. Slowly, awkwardly, he began adjusting. Not because he was suddenly enlightened, because the alternative now had consequences. And I was no longer bluffing. Months passed. Couples counseling became less tense. Conversations became more honest. Not perfect, but real. One evening, we attended another family gathering at Marjorie's house. The tension in that room was almost theatrical. Marjorie hugged Ethan tightly, then turned to me with her familiar, polished smile. So, Penelope, she said lightly, I hear you're working again. Must be nice to have something productive to do. The old me would have swallowed that. The new me did not. I've always been productive, I said calmly. Now I'm compensated for part of it. Silence. Frank cleared his throat from the recliner. She kept this family running, he said quietly. We all know that. Marjorie looked stunned. Ethan didn't laugh. He didn't correct me. He didn't make a joke. He just stood there, and that silence was louder than any toast he'd ever given. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Ethan sat beside me on the couch. I didn't realize how much you were carrying, he admitted. I looked at him carefully. I told you, I said. I didn't hear you, he corrected. That was the first real apology. Not for the joke. For the blindness. We're not magically perfect now. We still disagree. We still have moments where old patterns try to creep back in. But there's one thing that no longer exists in this house. The idea that my value depends on a paycheck. Because here's what I learned and what I want every woman watching this story to understand. You can give up income. You can pause a career. You can shift roles for your family. But the moment someone uses that sacrifice to shrink you, to control you, or to define you as less, that's not partnership. That's imbalance. And imbalance is not love. I didn't win because Ethan lost. I won because I stopped losing myself. Calling me a loser was supposed to humiliate me. Instead, it revealed something powerful. My silence had been protecting his ego. My voice protected me. And once I found it, I never gave it back.